The champagne had already been poured when I noticed her phone screen light up. Face down. Silent. But I saw the name, Ray Work. The text preview was only 2 words. You ready? She didn't check it. Not immediately. She laughed at something across the table, adjusted her necklace, and leaned closer to her friend Carla, as if nothing had happened. But I wasn't laughing. I'd already started counting the cracks forming in the evening. The restaurant was loud, not chaotic, just expensive loud. White tablecloths. Waiters who whisper. I'd called weeks in advance. Reserved the private room. Picked the wine she liked, even though I can't pronounce it. She had just been promoted to marketing director. The least I could do was pretend I didn't notice her flinch when I tried to hold her hand on the way in. Everyone kept saying how proud they were of her. Even people who barely knew her. There were 10 of us. A weird blend of work friends and people I hadn't seen since our wedding. A few laughed too loud at Ray's jokes. One girl kept glancing at him like he was famous. And when he finally walked in, 10 minutes late, no apology, the air shifted. Everyone noticed. Especially her. She stood before he reached the table, smoothed her dress, smiled in that particular way she only uses when she's performing. I'd seen that smile once, in the mirror, when she practiced it for a corporate photo shoot. He hugged her. People clapped like he just returned from war. I sipped my water. My stomach was already folding in on itself, but no one noticed. Of course not. I wasn't the star of the night. I was just the man who got her there. The background character in a night that stopped being about us a long time ago. Ray ordered for the table without asking. The waitress didn't blink. Dana laughed and said, "He knows what's best." I smiled, nodded. My jaw clicked from grinding. And then, somewhere between the tuna tartare and the clinking of dessert spoons, he stood. Knife gently tapped against glass. That obnoxiously charming smile spreading like a slow stain across his face. "I'd like to make a toast," he said. I didn't know, in that exact moment, how fast a man's heart could race while he's sitting completely still. But I was about to find out. Ray held his glass like it was a microphone, slowly turning to face everyone at the table like he was about to deliver the closing monologue of a Broadway show. He even waited for silence, scanning our faces one by one until his eyes landed on hers. Only hers. "I don't usually do this," he said, smiling. "But sometimes someone deserves to be properly acknowledged. Not just for what they accomplish, but for who they are while they do it." I felt my stomach twist tighter. He didn't look at me. Not once. Dana didn't just hit her targets. She rewrote them. She didn't just earn this position. She redefined it. A few polite chuckles around the table. He paused dramatically, then glanced down at his glass. I've worked with a lot of impressive people. Smart people. Focused people. But very few. Rare ones who leave a mark after they leave the room. He looked up again, and this time, his eyes lingered far too long. Dana has that kind of presence. That quiet gravity. The kind of woman who makes you want to walk into work every day, even when you hate your job. The kind of woman who makes you forget everything else. My ears rang. Literally rang. Like a frequency only I could hear. I blinked and stared at the candle in front of me, just to avoid looking at anyone's face. Especially hers. He raised his glass. To Dana. Not just the best hire I've ever made, but easily the best part of my day. Laughter. Applause. Even a couple of woos. Someone clinked their glass too hard, and it cracked. Everyone laughed again. Except me. I didn't touch my drink. I just looked at her. Waiting. She didn't say anything. She didn't correct him. She didn't glance at me. She smiled at Ray. That same smile she used on job interview panels and real estate agents. Her performance smile. And that's when it clicked. Not just the words. Not just the timing. But the way her hand was shaking when she tucked her hair behind her ear. The way she crossed and uncrossed her legs under the table like she was bracing for something. The way she knew what he was going to say before he said it. This wasn't a surprise. This wasn't a joke that went too far. This wasn't admiration. This was familiarity. I leaned back, my chair creaking just enough to pull 1 or 2 glances in my direction. I smiled, nodded like I was impressed, and then excused myself to the bathroom with the weakest voice I've ever heard come out of my mouth. I didn't need the bathroom. I needed air. I needed silence. I needed the answer to the one question that had just hijacked every nerve in my body. How long has this been going on? The men's room smelled like cedar and denial. I locked myself in the furthest stall and just stood there, fully dressed, staring at the polished tile wall like it might offer me answers if I stared hard enough. I could still hear his voice. I could still see her reaction. And I hated how I was already rewriting the past in my head. That late-night strategy session she had 2 Fridays ago, was it even real? The one where she came home smelling like hotel lobby soap and claimed the Uber dropped her 2 blocks away because of construction? The time she said she was working from home but spent 3 hours off camera on a client call, whispering in the other room? God, how many of those moments had I swallowed without even chewing? I pressed my palms against the wall and took a breath so deep it made my ribs ache. I'm not the kind of man who jumps to conclusions. If anything, I bend over backward to give people the benefit of the doubt, even when it breaks my own spine. But this wasn't paranoia. This wasn't jealousy. This was something else. Something obvious. Something heavy. And now, I had to walk back out there and pretend I hadn't just realized I might be the only one at that table who didn't know. When I came back, dessert had already been served. She was laughing again, but now it sounded like static in my ears. Everyone was leaning in, talking over each other. Ray was gone. His jacket still draped over the back of his chair, though. Apparently, he stepped out for a call. I sat down, and Dana looked at me briefly, almost too briefly, like she was checking to see if I'd combusted in the hallway. I didn't say a word. I just started cutting into the molten cake I no longer had an appetite for. Then it happened. Her phone lit up again, right there on the table. She didn't realize it was angled just enough for me to see. Ray, you okay? That might have come out too strong. I just couldn't help it. My hands went cold. She didn't react. She didn't even flinch. She just casually reached for the phone, face-downed it, and smiled at someone making a joke about office politics like her world wasn't cracking in two. I wasn't angry. Not yet. I was fascinated. Not by the betrayal, but by how easy she made it look. How many times had she rehearsed this performance? How long had she been maintaining 2 realities? One for me, one for him. I spent the rest of the night in that numb, slow-motion state people talk about during car crashes, laughing at the right moments, sipping from a glass I couldn't taste, nodding like my neck was operated by strings. It was like watching someone else pretend to be me. And the worst part? She looked happy, genuinely happy, not like someone hiding a lie, not like someone choking on guilt, but like a woman who had already chosen her future, and I just hadn't caught up yet. I think the scariest part wasn't the message or the hug or the way Ray looked at her like she belonged to him. It was how good she'd gotten at smiling through it all, how perfectly she disguised something so devastating as success. When the check came, someone offered to split it, but Dana insisted on covering most of it. Company card, she said, waving it like a flag of independence. Everyone cheered. I chuckled. Then I watched as she signed Ray's name without hesitation. It didn't even register to her that it was strange. Just normal, casual, routine. I didn't ask why she had access to her boss's corporate card. I didn't ask anything at all. I just watched her hand move, fluid and confident, as if this wasn't the first time she'd paid for something with his name. On the drive home, we barely spoke. She was scrolling through photos from the night, posting boomerangs of champagne to her story, adjusting filters like the lighting was the only thing that needed fixing. I sat beside her, hands on the wheel, eyes locked on the road, not trusting my voice. Then she broke the silence. You were really quiet tonight. That was it. No warmth. No concern. Just a statement, tossed out like a pebble into a deep well. I almost answered. Almost said, maybe that's what happens when your wife's boss gives a love letter disguised as a toast in front of 10 people and you act like it's no big deal. But I didn't, because I wasn't ready to hear her answer. Not yet. So instead, I said, just tired. She nodded. Yeah, it's been a long week. She didn't ask what I was tired of. And that's when I knew. This wasn't an accident. This wasn't some misread situation I'd talk myself out of in the morning. This wasn't Ray being unprofessional or flirty or inappropriate. This was deeper, muted, mutually understood. A silent agreement that had been signed, sealed, and protected by layers of plausible deniability. We got home around midnight. She kicked off her heels, grabbed a glass of water, and said she had to finish something for Monday. I nodded like a sleepwalker and headed to bed alone. But I didn't sleep. I stared at the ceiling for hours, listening to the faint sound of her keyboard from the other room, wondering who she was really typing to, and when exactly our life became a costume she wore for convenience. At 2:34 a.m., I got out of bed and walked into the kitchen. I opened her laptop. It wasn't locked. There were no open tabs. No messages. No documents. Just a blank screen. But the search history was clean. Too clean. Wiped entirely. I stood there, bathed in the blue glow of artificial trust, realizing I was married to a stranger with my wife's face. And then, as if summoned by some twisted force, her phone, plugged in on the counter, lit up with a single notification. No name. Just a preview. Still thinking about your legs in that dress. You're dangerous. I didn't unlock it. I didn't need to. That was the moment I stopped asking questions and started preparing for answers. I didn't sleep that night. Not even for a minute. My body lay there, still as stone, while my mind played back every moment I had ignored. Every excuse. Every delay. Every night she said she was too tired to talk, to eat, to even kiss goodnight. And now I was too tired to pretend any of it was random. By the time morning came, I wasn't angry. I wasn't hurt. I was focused. A kind of quiet, surgical clarity had taken over, the kind that kicks in when grief hardens into intention. I waited until she left. She had brunch plans with Carla and someone named Alyssa from branding, the type of people who only exist during convenient calendar slots. She threw on a beige coat I hadn't seen before, grabbed her crossbody bag, and kissed my cheek like she always did. Reflexively. Automatically. Be back in a couple hours, she said, already halfway out the door. I nodded. Drive safe. The moment the lock clicked behind her, I opened her closet. Now, I've never been that guy. The snooper. The phone checker. The browser history reader. But in that moment, morality was just a luxury I couldn't afford. I wasn't looking for drama. I was looking for truth. And maybe even the smallest crack in the wall she'd built around me. I wasn't expecting what I found. It wasn't a receipt, or a hotel keycard, or some cliché lipstick-stained anything. It was a scarf, still folded, still tagged. From a boutique in Manhattan I knew she hadn't visited recently, because we were both at her mother's house that weekend. But the purchase date on the tag didn't lie. 2 Saturdays ago. $280. That same weekend she said she had an off-site strategy meeting in the city with upper execs. I'd offered to drop her off. She said it'd be too crowded. Said she'd Uber. Said she'd text. She didn't. The scarf still had a faint scent to it, not perfume. Something spicier. Masculine. Maybe cologne rubbed off from someone helping her try it on. Or maybe something worse. I opened the drawer beside our bed next. I wasn't looking for secrets there. Just something human. Some proof that I still existed in her world. A note. A photo. A letter. Anything. But all I found was a locked journal I didn't know she owned. Black leather. Zippered edges. Gold initials at the bottom corner. DM. I didn't try to open it. Not because I respected her privacy. That was already gone. I didn't open it because, deep down, I knew what kind of words would be inside, and I wasn't ready to read the version of her that didn't include me. Instead, I turned on her work laptop. She always left it in sleep mode on the bookshelf. It opened right to her desktop. Dozens of folders. Campaigns. Branding decks. Everything spotless, efficient, clean. Except one folder tucked in the corner of the screen, labeled with a single letter, R. My pulse spiked. I clicked it. Empty. Not a single file. But the modification date said otherwise. Last opened, 12:43 a.m., the night of the dinner. I stared at the screen, so long my eyes blurred. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't imagining this. I was standing inside a house full of smoke, and everyone was still complimenting the curtains. Then her phone buzzed again. I froze. It was still on the counter where she left it charging. Another preview. Unknown number. Wish I could see you today. I'll be thinking about that dress. No name this time. Just a reminder that while I was busy building a life, someone else was already living inside it. I didn't touch the phone. I didn't take screenshots. I didn't call the number. I just stood there, motionless, until the screen faded black. Then I did something I never thought I would do. I grabbed my keys, got in the car, and drove to her office. I had no plan. No speech. I didn't even know if she was really at brunch. But I needed to see it. The space. The energy. The place where this version of her, this new, unreachable Dana, existed when I wasn't around. And when I got there, I saw it. I saw him, standing outside the building, leaning against a silver Jaguar, phone to his ear, laughing. Not at work. Not in a meeting. Not away on business. Ray. And sitting in the passenger seat was Dana. wearing that beige coat, smiling at him like I never existed. I didn't get out of the car. I didn't honk. I didn't scream. I just sat there across the street, engine idling, watching the woman I married exist inside a reality I clearly wasn't invited to. From where I was parked, I had a perfect view. They weren't touching, not overtly. No hand on her knee. No kiss. Nothing concrete. But intimacy doesn't always need to be physical. Sometimes it's in the way two people pause around each other. The comfort, the unspoken fluency of shared secrets. Dana looked relaxed, shoulders loose, one leg casually crossed as she laughed at something Ray said. Her hand went up to her neck in that exact way she always did when she was flirting, a subconscious gesture she probably didn't even realize she still used. Ray was mid-story, animated, grinning. Not professional, not respectful, not restrained, just comfortable. Like this was routine, like this had been happening for months. I kept thinking maybe she'd glance around. Maybe she'd sense me. But she never did. She never even looked up from him. The world had shrunk to just the two of them. And for the first time in my entire life, I felt like a ghost in my own story. I don't know how long I sat there. Could have been 3 minutes or 30. Eventually, he handed her something. A small gift bag. She opened it and pulled out a box. Laughed. Touched his arm. Then she leaned over and hugged him again. Not a long hug this time, but one of those tight, two-handed ones. The kind you give someone who knows your body better than they should. That's when I left. No drama. No confrontation. I didn't want to give them that. I didn't want to be the desperate husband in a parking lot scene. I didn't want her to see my heartbreak and wear it as a badge of power. I drove home in silence, hands clenched around the wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white. When she came home 3 hours later, she smelled like citrus and secrets. She tossed her bag on the couch, walked into the kitchen like nothing had happened, and said, "Ugh." Carla and Alyssa wouldn't stop talking. I need to decompress. I was sitting at the table, pretending to read the same page of a book I hadn't turned in half an hour. "How was brunch?" I asked, without looking up. "Chaotic," she said, grabbing a bottle of sparkling water. "You didn't miss anything." She was lying to my face, and she was good at it. There wasn't a crack in her voice. No hesitation. No guilt. Just another polished lie delivered with surgical precision. I nodded. Then I asked, without blinking, "Did Ray join you?" Silence. Just for a second. Just long enough to confirm everything. She didn't flinch. She didn't stammer. She just raised an eyebrow and smiled. "Ray? No. Why?" I closed the book. "Just wondered," I said. "I thought I saw his car downtown, near the restaurant." Another pause. This one tighter. "Oh, maybe he was grabbing lunch. He has that board meeting on Monday. You know how he stress eats." She sipped the water. Calm. Controlled. And that's when I realized something deeper. She wasn't trying to protect me from the truth. She was protecting him. I could see it now, clear as daylight. Her loyalty wasn't torn. It had already shifted. She wasn't hiding this to preserve our marriage. She was hiding it because he was the one she was defending. She was still married to me legally, yes, but emotionally, mentally, intimately, she had already transferred her allegiance. Quietly. Completely. I stared at her for a long time that night while she scrolled on her phone, legs tucked beneath her on the couch, like nothing in the world was wrong. And I wondered, how do you confront someone who's already erased you? How do you ask a question when you already know the answer? How do you end something that the other person has already replaced? I didn't sleep that night either. But this time I wasn't sad. I was calculating. Because the version of me she knew, the passive, patient, pleading version, was gone. And if she could build a second life behind my back, then I could quietly dismantle the first one in front of hers. The next morning, I made her coffee. Almond milk. A little cinnamon. Just how she liked it. She smiled, kissed my cheek, told me I was the best. I nodded, and she never noticed the subtle way my hand trembled when I handed it to her. Not from nerves. From restraint. The plan wasn't revenge. It wasn't punishment. It wasn't even about making her confess. It was about control, or rather, reclaiming it. For months, maybe years, I'd been living inside a carefully maintained illusion where I existed only when it was convenient. She made me a background character in my own marriage. And now, I had to write myself a new role, one where I walked away with dignity, not desperation. I started small. I moved cash out of our joint account. Quietly, in round numbers. I made it look like investments or savings reallocations. She never noticed. She never asked. Why would she? She had bigger things to manage, like Ray. I changed the password to my iCloud, backed up all our shared photos, deleted them from our devices. I printed a few, real, physical prints, and locked them in a box. Not because I wanted to remember, but because I needed to grieve properly later, without screens distorting the past. I stopped texting her during the day. At first, she noticed. Sent a few, everything okay, messages. I replied with busy at work or meetings back to back. She didn't push. In fact, within days, she stopped texting me first. That alone told me more than any GPS ping or email search ever could. She didn't want to lose me. She'd already let go. But I wasn't done yet. I started watching her, not in a creepy way, but through the lens of a man who no longer trusted the script. I noted when she left, what she wore, what time she came home. I kept track of her calendar, which meetings were off-site, which ones magically ran late, which ones coincided with Ray's travel schedule. It didn't take long to spot the pattern. Every Tuesday and Thursday, she got home after 8 p.m. Every time, she claimed traffic or last-minute brainstorming sessions. I said nothing, just nodded, kissed her forehead, and went back to doing the dishes. The kind of husband who pretends not to notice. But I noticed everything. I kept a record. I wrote it all down. I even tracked Ray's movements on LinkedIn and Facebook because he was arrogant enough to check in at airports, post hotel selfies, tag restaurants. I built a timeline so tight it could have been submitted in court. And still, I waited. Because confrontation wasn't the goal. Exit was. I wanted to leave without giving her a single dramatic scene to distort. No slammed doors. No broken plates. No accusations she could cry through and twist into sympathy. I wanted the silence to haunt her more than any screaming ever could. The final piece came from a USB drive. Years ago, I had helped her set up backups for her phone, just in case. The drive had old exports, messages, notes, even synced photos. She never remembered to erase them. She forgot they existed at all. That's where I found it. A photo. Not of them kissing. Not of them in bed. But of her, in Ray's office. Wearing that beige coat. Snapping a mirror selfie, lips curled in a smirk I didn't recognize. And behind her, on his desk, plain as daylight, was the same gift bag he gave her the day of the brunch. No date stamp. No location tag. But I didn't need one. It was enough. Not as proof, but as closure. I stared at that image for hours. Not because it broke my heart. Because it confirmed what I already knew. She wasn't mine anymore. Maybe she never really was. That night, I made dinner. Her favorite. Salmon, roasted vegetables, a chilled glass of white. She came home late. Surprise. Said she had a migraine. I told her to sit, eat, relax. She smiled, touched my hand, and told me I was too good to her. And I just smiled back. Because in 3 days, I'd be gone. 3 days later, I woke up at 5:30 a.m., quietly, deliberately. The house was still. The air felt different, as if it already knew something was about to shift. I got dressed in the same clothes I wore the night we celebrated her promotion. Same button-down, same watch. I even combed my hair the way she always said she liked. She was asleep in our bed, tangled in the sheets, one hand under the pillow like she was still clutching a dream. I stood in the doorway for a long time, watching the woman I had once planned a future with sleep through the moment I decided to stop holding on. I didn't wake her. I didn't need to. I had written a letter. Not angry. Not bitter. Just real. A few pages, folded neatly and placed on the kitchen counter, next to a cup of coffee I made one last time. No accusations. No names. Just the truth she'd spent so long avoiding, and the peace I'd spent so long seeking. In the letter, I thanked her. Not for the pain. Not for the lies. But for teaching me exactly what I don't want to carry into the next chapter of my life. I told her I forgave her. Fully. Quietly. Because forgiveness, I've learned, isn't something you give to the person who hurt you. It's something you give to yourself so you can finally let go. I left my keys on the hook by the door. Took my suitcase, my documents, the USB drive, and the memories I chose to keep. Not many. Just enough to remind myself that I was there. That I loved fully. That I didn't lose. I just outgrew the story. The car ride was silent. No music. Just the sound of tires humming along the road as the city blurred behind me. The sun was rising, soft and gold and full of possibility. I didn't have a destination yet. Just a direction. And somehow that was enough. Weeks have passed since then. I've started over. Quietly, slowly, beautifully. I'm living in a small apartment now, nothing fancy. It's just mine. There's a little balcony where I drink coffee in the mornings. Sometimes I write. Sometimes I just listen to the silence I used to be so afraid of. It's not empty anymore. It's clean. I've made new friends. I laugh more. I eat better. I sleep without clenching my teeth. And one night, I caught myself humming while brushing my teeth, something I hadn't done in years. That's when I knew. I made it out. Not just of the marriage, but out of the version of myself that thought being loved meant being tolerated. That thought silence was peace. That thought loyalty meant swallowing pain without a sound. I don't hate her. I don't want revenge. I hope she finds whatever it is she was chasing. But me? I've stopped chasing anything. I'm just living. And for the first time in a long, long time, it feels like enough.